in Cornwall, they are ambushed by protesters, a small group of Christians and former witnesses concerned about what they describe as the Watchtower Society's false prophecies.
Check out the facts, my friend, about 1914. Do you know they've lied to you?
Jehovah's Witnesses said the world would end in 1914, 1918, in 1925 and in 1975. Prophecies many current witnesses may be unaware of.
Why did they lie to you about 1914? They've changed the generation. Why? Why? Check it out.
The demonstration disintegrates into street theatre, and the protest appears to achieve very little.
Funny, there's only the general public who are prepared to take this.
The protesters get a distinctly un-Christian response. Some witnesses are rude, none take much notice. Experts say loyalty to the Watchtower Society has become a test of a person's fitness to survive Armageddon, so all witnesses think and behave in the same manner. Nigel Rapson was a Jehovah's Witness almost all his life. He left last year disillusioned with their policies. He says he was forced to conform from a very early age and now has a limited ability to make decisions for himself.
I feel that a lot of my life has been stolen, taken away from me. I feel that I spent years where basically the important decisions in my life were being made for me. Disobeying the religious authority and not doing as you're told in the pages of the Jehovah's Witnesses magazine is tantamount to disobeying God himself. So, of course, you do exactly as you're told, and you don't really learn, I think a lot of your ability to develop, to use your conscience and your mental facilities to interact with the world, you can't do that. You're kept in a sterile environment. You're hermetically sealed from the rest of the world. So you see things in a very polarized way. It's us and it's the rest of the world.
Work as a part-time window cleaner enabled Nigel Rapson to keep the rest of the world at arm's length. A big bonus for a Jehovah's Witness, and it's claimed that around half the window cleaners in Britain are members of the sect. Nigel still does the job, and so does his partner David Frost, another ex-witness. David says the flexible working hours left him plenty of time for doorstep preaching.
The first time I met my wife, Deborah, was when I was out on the door-to-door preaching work. She was a pretty girl behind the door, and we met, and we started talking, and from that a relationship blossomed. Unfortunately, this was to the detriment of my beliefs, because, as the witnesses told me, I should only marry people within the congregation. But they said to me, why would you want to seek a worldly girl? Well, we fell in love, and we wanted to live for the rest of our life together.
David and Deborah got married despite the opposition of the Watchtower Society. Now they have 3 children, but David claims the strain it put on their relationship was one reason he left the organization. Their marriage first faltered over the question of blood. The Watchtower Society used to require its members to refuse to have medical vaccinations and organ transplants. Both policies have now been dropped. But Jehovah's Witnesses today are still expected to sign a document which denies them a blood transfusion in an emergency. When Deborah went into labor with her first child, David says he bullied her into signing that form.
I had David pressuring me not to have blood, and I had the doctors pressuring me to sign it just in case I did need it. And obviously I love my husband, and I listened to him, and I signed the form. I felt like I was playing Russian roulette in my life. I obviously signed the form to say that I didn't want to accept blood. Although really what I was thinking was, well, what if I didn't? What if something happened, you know? I would probably die, which I did hemorrhage. Lucky for me, I'm the Leo to tell the tale.
Deborah had a hemorrhage. If she had required a blood transfusion, would you have allowed her to have one?
No, not at that time, no. I would have done exactly as I was taught to do, and that is not to have blood. I would have trusted in the society's understanding of that scripture, even though I would have watched my wife die, like many other witnesses in the past have died because of not having blood.
We put these observations to the Jehovah's Witnesses, but they refused to comment, claiming they felt no need to defend the movement and no merit in taking part in the program. Peter Price says Jehovah's Witnesses think and behave in such extreme ways because they lose the ability to think for themselves. Peter was a witness for 25 years and 8 years an elder in Exmouth. He says Jehovah's Witnesses can be excommunicated for even reading anything critical of the Watchtower Society. Independent thinking is of the devil.
They achieve their uniformity by use of the Watchtower magazine, by instilling in every Jehovah's Witness the belief that Jehovah's Witnesses are the only organisation in the world that have the truth. Now, every Watchtower is studied in every congregation around the world, notwithstanding different time zones, at the same time. So all that material has been considered in exactly the same way at the same time. So every Jehovah's Witness is getting the same instructions, the same information, and responding exactly the same way. You are forbidden to read or study any material that is not published by Jehovah's Witnesses. Our responses were pre-programmed. The argument is that all the information that Jehovah's Witnesses need to know on every subject is contained within the files of the Watchtower Society. And the reason, of course, is that once doubts start, then the crack opens and you might just leave. Or worse, talk to other Jehovah's Witnesses and give them doubts as well, which is why they control that supply of information so carefully. And in fact, as I understand it, reading magazines or books or any literature which is critical of Jehovah's Witnesses, particularly those written by ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, is now a disfellowshipping offence. If you are caught doing it, you can be removed from the congregation, which I find quite frightening.
Excommunication is the worst thing that can happen to a Jehovah's Witness. Anybody who leaves the congregation, even voluntarily, and defies the Watchtower Society is cut off from friends and family. Lynn Mawson and her son Phil now worship in a Baptist church, but for many years were Jehovah's Witnesses. When Lynn left the movement for conscientious reasons, Phil ignored her for a year and a half, forcing his mother to come back.
It was painful for me, but I knew I had to put the organisation first. And if I was to put the organisation first, then I would have to comply with its strictures. And one of those strictures is that a person who voluntarily disassociates himself is to be shunned as a person who is excommunicated for a heinous crime. It uses terminology, the Watchtower does, which I applied, which says we must loathe with utter detestation and people who forsake God and his organisation. And this is what I had to develop. This is the attitude which I had to reflect against my own mother.
When I next went to town, my son was coming along with his children, and, you know, I automatically just greeted them, and I was shocked. Absolutely nothing. The little children's faces sort of turned away from me, and I could not believe it. I felt so hurt.
She called to me, and I ignored her, I shunned her, and I did do for a long, long time. This led to psychological pressure on her part, and she felt the only way to have her family back was to make her way back to the congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. And this is what she did. It wasn't done through her own decision-making, it was done through psychological pressure to get her family back.
They later left the Watchtower Society together and took a large number of family members with them.